Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Busy. Summertime's coming up. All the different plans. Work getting a little crazy. So it's been kind of chasing my own tail, it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah. Hopefully all good stuff though.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in a lot of good ways. They released book 2, so that's been fun, and that's been part of the chaos is all that stuff plus a book release. So that's been part of the adventure anyway.
Nice. Well, we'll catch people up. Michael Woudenberg. When we talked to you December, I looked it up just 6 months ago. I think you had just released your first book called Paradox.
Oh yeah, Paradox was released last summer, so it was about 6 months after the release. Oh, 5 months actually. So yeah.
Okay. So this is about a year after the first book release then.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And Paradox is the first book in the Singularity series or Singularity, right?
The Singularity Chronicles, correct.
Singularity Chronicles, thank you. And then, so set us up. What is this series about for people that may not have listened in to your first podcast?
Right. So the Singularity Chronicles started with Paradox, and Paradox is, the tagline is, in the battle over advanced AI, will we lose our humanity or learn what truly makes us human? And so it really kind of explores it's not science fiction like 100 years in the future in some fictitious world or different galaxy. It's here and now. It really kind of starts in the contemporary and does explore, like, what would it take to get us to artificial general intelligence, that is an AI that is as smart as a human, and what are the consequences of that? And so it kind of pits the brother and a sister against each other a little bit. Kira's going after trying to develop this AI and to really kind of capture their dying mother's essence. She's dying of cancer, so they're trying to like preserve the legacy of their mother. And then Noah takes the opposing approach of saying, no, let the humans be the humans. Keep them separate from the technology. And so it really kind of explores that dichotomy, and along the way trying to explore truly what it means to be human. So that the culmination of that book, I'm not going to give too many spoilers on this one. It's a little bit of an apocalyptic fiction, so there's maybe a little spoiler there. But the end of that book ends with the split between the AI kind of heading off into the stars, and then the humans resetting and trying to see if they can do better next time. So book 2, Integration, follows the AI into the next period of the adventure. And the big thing from there is, basically divorced from a human body, can AI shed human limitations? So these are AI who Kira actually uploads herself into this AI. And one of the things within Paradox is the blending of logic and emotion is kind of what creates what I call the AGI. And so now this cognizant AI is trying to figure out, like, hey, we have all these experiences of what it means to be human, but we don't have any of the corporal body for what these things are derived by. So what do things like gender or sexuality or even race and culture and social structures, what do those mean if you don't actually have a body? So it's kind of a fun way to explore these things where, like, it's topics that are kind of sensitive to be like, well, I am this. Well, the AI is not that because they don't have that body, but there's still something baked in there that's important to reconcile for the AI, again, about what it means to be human.
Right. So it kind of makes my brain hurt just even trying to imagine like how you set up these characters. And so is Kira with the AI? Do they need somebody to make the electricity? How are they even doing?
Sorry. Kira is the AI. So not to spoil too much. Well, I guess in chapter 1, you find out that Kira uploads herself into the AI, and then it
Okay.
kind of does a flashback, flash forward.
But was
So
she ever
Kira,
was she ever human?
yes, Kira is a real human in the book in
Okay.
Paradox, and then she and Noah, have this, human to human conflict as it kind of reconciles through. But then she, in the end, she uploads herself into the AI as a consciousness in the AI.
Okay.
So a series of other humans. There's 12 other consciousnesses at the start of integration who were human derived to begin with. So that's the weird little twist. That's the interesting thing about Paradox, is that the AI is actually not completely artificial. It's actually human intelligence loaded into a computing system is really what it comes down to. So the way I played with it is that the way to make the AGI is actually to create human intelligence in the AI. Anyway, so the book 2 is taking these AIs that used to be human and trying to reconcile what it meant to have those human emotions, those thoughts, those feelings, those experiences, and now no longer having that body.
Okay, so they have no bodies whatsoever, or do they have a robotic body?
So that's a great question. So, I mean, in one way, they are constrained to a physical environment of a computer. So that's
Okay,
a
so
bit of a body.
they're just in the computer though. So
They're in the computer, and so they can inhabit. There are like robot mechs that they can inhabit. They can inhabit spacecraft if they want, or things like that. They're only limited by the computing system that they would be loaded into. So a lot more dynamic than what a physical human body can be. So, for instance, further along in integration, they're exploring after kind of a little crucible of contest between different personalities. Kira and her group get kind of sent off into space and are exploring what's technically called the local interstellar cloud. But so it's kind of a space-based adventure there. But they end up coming up with quantum entangled networks in quantum radios. So the interesting thing is, once they've transited physically the distance and set up their radio network, they can actually move between these different computing systems and these different star systems nearly instantly. So they have technically faster than light travel because they don't actually have physical bodies to limit their consciousness moving from one star system to another computer system in a different star system. They just have to transit a network.
Interesting. Wow. That just, I mean, what is your background? Do you have a technical background, or did you teach yourself all of this?
very, very much. Well, so both. So my background is actually in advanced technologies. So I do the technical term is operations research. So it's basically systems analysis of complex technologies and how to kind of integrate them. So I've worked everything from blockchain to nuclear energy to autonomy, AI, cyber, basically name it, quantum computing. I've worked with a lot of these different technologies trying to figure out how to bring them into kind of reality within specifically defense contracting within I've worked at Honeywell, Raytheon, and Lockheed. And so working across those different areas, trying to figure out how to bring these advanced technologies into play. So that's my background. Now, there was still a lot of research in here, a lot of trying to make sure that it was truly science fiction meets science fact. I make some jokes. It's like against some of the other science fiction where it's like, well, why is this stuff happening? Well, this isn't science fiction here. This is reality. These AIs are dealing with it. Like, the spacecraft just flying through space is so easy in Star Wars, but in reality, there's so much little particulate matter and debris and all this other stuff that you actually have to have crazy shielding on your ships. So a lot of sci-fi kind of waves their hand over top of these physics problems, and I end up my characters kind of have to deal with a lot of those physics problems up in their face as they truly explore space.
So this book sounds like it's a little bit more hard sci-fi maybe than Paradox.
So, Paradox was a hard sci-fi but more contemporary. This is similar in that vein, but and I would say whereas Paradox was a lot more on, probably a bit more focused on the psychology. This one definitely has a little bit more of a flavor of the physics. Like one of the chapters 7 is titled physics, and just kind of what it means to work in a three-dimensional environment in space, as you navigate. And it's not too heavy. It's a fun, very approachable. It's like kind of like Neil deGrasse Tyson wrote something like quantum physics for a person without enough time or something like that, right? It's kind of channeling his thing. Like, how do you understand the basics of this without having to get too lost in the sauce while making it entertaining? And so that's where I approached the technical parts of this book from.
Right. Yeah. So I've gotten to the level of knowing like what like quantum compute, I don't know if it's quantum computing is the same as quantum physics, but knowing how a quantum computer might work. Like I've gotten to that level, but that's as far as I've gotten so far. So
yeah, and they're about the same. I mean, they're both I mean, quantum computing relies on quantum physics ideas of entanglement, and then the quantum radios that I end up working with is using that one as well. So if you can take two quantumly entangled objects and then separate them from a distance, in theory, in the quantum theory, you should be able to pass information, or at least a connection between it, kind of a resonance or something, to pass data across. So that's kind of some threads I pull on that. And that's very similar to how quantum computing actually works at a molecular level.
right, fun. Yeah, so I know some friends that are in the magnetometer space, and they have some vapor cells and some lasers that work in their magnetometers that use the quantum technology. So I got there, and I'm like, oh, I got this far. So my background is biology, so Noah would be more my speed.
Yeah, right. No, and actually Paradox covers a lot of, like, stepping into the biology of, like, kind of even how the human body works. And we talked about this in the last podcast, but how even like how our brain works. Most people think it's right up here. Well, actually our brain is actually connected to so much more in our body. You talk about the gut health, the gut brain, the relationship of all the hormones that flow through that. We are not our emotions are actually a function of our entire body, not just our head or our heart. And so that's where the biology kind of comes in, interestingly, is understanding how we even work as humans. It's fascinating.
And it's funny, I didn't pick up on this when we talked before, but I was just realizing, is Noah's name symbolic of him forming this new, I guess, human civilization, for lack of a better term?
There's definitely a lot of symbolism there.
Okay.
A person, he doesn't know necessarily, like know of the Bible, hey, repent and everything else, but he does survive an apocalypse and carry forward humans into a kind of a reset civilization from the hubris of the past. So there is a little bit of a resonance there for certain.
Okay, so you have the second book out. What's next? Is this a series that's going to continue?
It is. So as I said, so this Paradox kind of covers in the battle over advanced AI, will we lose our humanity? The end of that one kind of splits into two threads. So integration follows the thread of the AI, exploring, again, kind of divorced from a human body. Can we shed human limitations? And then that arc kind of pauses there, and the next arc is going to take an interesting twist. And this is where I'm in the middle of all my note gathering and ideation in my head, because I have to kind of switch genres slightly. I've been writing science fiction. I went from a contemporary science fiction to kind of a hard science fiction, but this next part of the arc follows Noah or the humans in their reset. So the humans at the end of book one reset 4,000 years to basically a middle Bronze Age. So this next book is going to be called Rebirth, but it's going to pick up about 1,000 or 2 years after the end of book one, and the humans are going to be in like a high Roman time frame. So it's going to be like alternative timeline, kind of a fantasy. Kind of, there's a weird little twist. It's not going to be like pure fantasy like dwarves or elves or anything, but more of a human alternative timeline going back. But it's going to be obviously kind of not science fiction anymore. So I'm trying to get into the right mindset of how to weave that, because then book 4 is going to be titled Hope, and kind of it'll fast forward another 1,000 years or so. And I think about this as like a late 1800s, early 1900s industrial revolution, almost steampunk, and it's building up what have the humans done differently this time? What sort of energy? Are they fossil fuel based? Are they not? How are they manifesting themselves? But then building that, is society at a spot where we're going to tip back to the apocalypse that was caused in book one, where we're kind of at now, or can they avoid that and reset? And then, so that's kind of the big hanging question. And then the final book, book 5, is exploration, which is going to pick back up the arc of the AI at the end of whether the humans can actually continue forward or reset again. So I anticipate a full 5 books. So the first 2 are science fiction. The next 2 are going to be kind of a alternative history, possibly steampunky, and then the 5th one's going to pick back up more of a classic science fiction thread.
Interesting. So do the humans going to have all that history of knowing what happened in the apocalypse, or are they going to have lost it all?
So part of the reset, they reset without the knowledge of the advanced technologies, without the knowledge of these different things. What they're going to have is they're going to have myth and they're going to have legends.
Okay.
And they're, kind of like what we have in a large way, like the story of Atlantis is a story of myth and legend about hubris and a reset and a wiping out of a race that we're not quite sure what to do with. And is it a warning? Is it something to avoid? Have we just lost that to history? So books 3 and 4 are going to have those echoes of that past. And that's going to be one of the interesting tensions, is there are going to be characters, I envision, who are going to be like, hey, this is a warning, we need to learn from this. And there's going to be others that are like, come on, man, that's all just legend. That's just myth. That stuff doesn't happen. We're much more advanced than that. Those are fireside stories from ignorant people. And kind of an interesting way to play with it. So they're going to have some knowledge, but whether or not they're able to put that knowledge to use or not is going to be the interesting exploration in the next 2 books.
Yeah. So when you break off in singularity, when you break off in integration with book 2, is that AI just right after the first book from the apocalypse?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So that breaks off, and it's written in 3 phases, and this is where it got to be a little interesting, because I got to play with time dilation, where they're moving at the faster or almost the speed of light. So the speed that they're experiencing is half the time that Earth is experiencing. Okay. Really kind of an interesting plot line there. But the book 2 actually covers over 3 different kind of threads. Covers 1,000 years. So it kind of jumps forward about 1,000 years in, and that allows me to pick up book 3, about 1,000 years after that. Okay. So there's not a huge break in that one, but yeah, it really does pick up right after the end of book 1, and then kind of brings you forward, brings you forward, brings you forward. Because they're AI, it's not like you lose the characters, because they are now kind of immortal in some ways. And that's another thing they have to kind of deal with, is what do you do when you don't have a physical body that will degrade?
Right. As long as they have electricity, they're fine. Right?
Fundamentally, right.
Hopefully. Yeah, so that's interesting. Did you ever think about doing it where the 2 stories were integrated, so you would have like a chapter about what's going on with the AI and then break to I'm just wondering why you chose to do it in separate books rather than like a chapter explaining what's going on in the AI world and then a chapter showing like what's going on in the human world.
I thought it would be, it's a great question. First off, I wish I had like some awesome, sophisticated answer for that one. But fundamentally, I think it was a function of keeping the threads decently constrained without losing, because I didn't want to be oscillating too much. And I had to kind of fast forward a little bit to the AI. And the AI really, I tried to also keep, Paradox was about 120,000 words. So it's a pretty good read. It's not too light. And my goal was to keep integration below 100,000 words. Okay. And so to do that, I couldn't have too many excursions left and right. And I didn't want to get too tangled, because there would be too many threads to try to pull Plus, because integration was really jumping 1,000 years over that period, it wouldn't have really matched up.
Okay.
There are a couple plays back and forth where there is interaction with Earth,
Okay.
but not from the Earth perspective. It's from the AI perspective. So
Right.
the next one's going to be kind of constrained against a tighter timeline with a series of human characters. And I anticipate having a couple threads back, maybe a prologue or a prelogue or whatever, where it's kind of like, having the AI some engagement with it. There'll be a little Easter eggs all the way through it about where there's threads, but I don't anticipate having a back and forth on that one. Plus, I honestly think the interesting art that I'm trying to play with is balancing science fiction and then kind of a fantasy and weaving them together in parallel tracks, because it's interesting because science fiction and fantasy becomes its own classification of genre that gets bundled together all the time in the marketing. And so it's interesting kind of have a foot in both doors in this series and weave
Right.
them back together.
Right. Yeah. But because I'm thinking like the human civilizations might not even have the technology to talk to the AI people, right? If they've abandoned that
Right,
technology.
right. And they certainly don't. And
Okay.
so it'll be interesting because that's where you could start to play with a little bit of that in the fourth book, where they're getting, basic radios and they're being able to, look at radio signals or things like that. Can they have these inclinations that there might be something else out there because of what they're seeing, with their base technologies? But I don't anticipate. I'm trying to. The whole point of book number at the end of book one is the AI agreed to leave the humans alone and not try to screw around with them too much. So to see if they could, without any additional interference, avoid the mistakes of Paradox.
Interesting. Yeah, there's so many, my mind is like circling with so many ideas or, what ifs in that storyline. So, and I have your books on my computer. They're like next on my list. So I'm excited to read both of them.
Oh, awesome, awesome. So
So
yeah,
yeah,
it's.
I'm thinking like
I'm
almost,
sorry.
you have this sci-fi and then it's almost like the human thread is like a futuristic historical fiction because they're like recreating their society.
Yeah, and it really is. It is going to be interesting, and I would like to, the whole point when I started these books, and I think we talked about it last time, was it really AI and then kind of like the reset and things like that make a great literary foil on which to really explore who we are as humans. And I think a lot of people miss that. Like, and the different conversations I've had, even since publishing Paradox, and everyone's all in a tizzy about AI in the tech and writing world. But in the middle, what's lost in it all is, what does it mean to be human? Who are we? How do we work? How do we operate? And what I really am kind of proud about Paradox and integration, and what I'm intending to continue the thread on, is these books are a great adventure. They're a great story. They're getting great reviews. I think they're like 4.9 rated on Amazon, tons of 5-star reviews. People are really enjoying the books, but they're also enjoying the feedback I get on the side is, I really like the book, but holy crap, I can't tell you the number of times I've thought about the what I've learned in the books. He's like, I've read, so there's one person I was just talking to, they're like, I've read a lot of sci-fi. I rarely think about them afterwards. I'm like, that was a good story. They're like, I read Paradox, almost a year ago. He's like, I probably not a week goes by I'm not thinking about something I learned in that book about me. I'm on social media, I'm typing away. I'm like, oh, that was like chapter 16. Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Or seeing somebody respond to something, be like, oh, that's like what Noah would do. Oh. And so it's just the other feedback is that when people read it, they're like, wow, I didn't realize how much I was going to learn from these books.
Yeah, I'm likening the AI revolution and maybe probably I mean, there's some, oh,
Lost video for a second.
yeah, oh, I accidentally hit the button. So maybe like, I mean, there are ethical implications as well as psychological implications. And, I'm kind of likening it to when we had, when cloning was first a thing, right? The 80s, the
Mm-hmm.
90s. And there were so many like sides and opinions and considerations and schools of thought based on, well, if we can clone ourselves, then who are we? And it's sort of the same thing, is if we can
Yep.
create another being that's not human, then how is that different from us, or is it different from us? And
Right.
what
Yep.
are those lines that are being crossed or not crossed?
And more so, what is us?
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, so the use of AI in the authoring community is a hypersensitive topic, and because people they create a binary, like real artists don't use AI at all. I'm like, I'm sorry, it's baked into everything. You're using it in your research, you're using it. Now, I'm not suggesting, and I will never suggest you go out and you write a book with AI, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you can replace the author. In fact, I did a short video on, AI in authoring. And fundamentally, as in writing this book, what I found is that there is a very unique capability that humans have. However, it's not, there's a lot of things that AI can help assist with. Like a couple conversations I've had, this one person, they're an author, their husband is has dyslexia, and they've been the husband's been bugging him for years, like, hey, I need you to write this book, I need you to write this book. And they're like, I'm writing my own books, like I don't can't really write your books, like I don't know how to do that. But with Chat GPT coming out, this person can now get their ideas, put it in there, and get something out. Now the prose is terrible, but at least get something. And for the people who have dyslexia, that's the hardest part. They can go through and edit, right? But they have and put it back into a different voice, but they have a really hard time getting it out there. And so in a really weird and interesting way, this person was able to actually unlock their creativity with AI, whereas previously they would have to have somebody else write it for them. And then is it their creativity, or was it somebody else's that was balancing it, right? The AI isn't doing a great job with it, so it's their idea. And another story was, this person was this other author, she was suffering from a neurological disorder, and she needed help kind of finishing it up. And she was able to use the AI tools and help finish her manuscript and actually get it published, whereas her neurological condition was progressing to the point that that was going to be an impossibility. So there's a side here where these tools are incredibly useful, but then there's a lot of shaming in the author community for any implication of any use of AI. It's like, there's people on their badges like, zero AI content, zero AI tools, zero, and so it's a really weird thing. But in the middle is lost the nuance of how humans actually create. And I'll just kind of sum it up with a quick analogy. Plato railed against writing, against oral tradition, because he feared it would cause our minds, it was damaging creativity, because it would, everything else, right? Scribes in the late 1400s, early 1500s railed against the printing press because it was mechanistic. It took away the art of writing, because these scribes were hand scribing everything, and the printing press was neutering the art of writing. Painters railed against photographers, and photographers rail against the Instagram photographers. But in the end, we don't have less art in the world. We have more art in the world. And our writing today is based off of computers, the printing press, and the written word, all of which have been railed against in the past for having problems with it. So I'm not trying to say that everyone should just jump on and use AI, but it's more of the implication of the history of how we progress through technology and how it can actually empower versus eliminate art.
Right. That's interesting, because I feel like, if you like, every time I write something, my computer will say, do you want this next? Right. Whether it's on my phone, in my email, even in a Word document, says, what about this next? Right. And that's AI basically. So if you hit tab or enter or whatever it is, that's a little bit of AI there. So, and sometimes it's not helpful, and sometimes it is. Like if you're typing the same thing over and over again, it's like, okay, just let me hit enter, and it says as if, as if, as if.
Well, that's right, and this is where it's like there's a line, and because I say AI is a useful tool does not mean I'm going to say replace writers with AI, right? And I explore. Actually, back in Paradox, chapter 3 is titled Almost Intelligent, and it explores, can AI be creative? and it explores, okay, how creative are humans? And these are the things that I'm trying to actually articulate, again, these books. They're a great adventure, but they also should help us understand who we are as humans better. And hopefully that can allow us to understand what AI is and isn't, and what we should do about it ethically, morally, or otherwise. Because right now we're getting a bifurcation that's existing. I'm like, that's exactly what I'm hoping to avoid in the story. That's what caused the chaos of paradox and that gave integration its boost.
Well, yeah, if you think about so many issues in, human existence, I guess there is like usually a camp on one side and a camp on the other side. And then there's some people that are like, oh no, we can marry these two things without having to be one extreme or the other. So, I guess
Yep.
it depends on where you fall in that spectrum.
And I come from the background of technology, so I'm not afraid of it. I deal with it all the time. I'm a techno pragmatist. I'm not a techno optimist like a tech bro, Silicon Valley. We're going to embed chips in our brains, right? But I'm also not a techno pessimist. I don't see this as being the end of the world or something to panic about. I'm a techno pragmatist. I think there's a good use and a good case. And for the most part, I think what people miss about the AI story is that if you self-publish, your entire ecosystem is empowered by AI. You are able to use Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, which drops your book in, and there's no human processing it and parsing it into the EPUB format that goes out there. There's no everything, your entire interaction on Amazon Webs or Kindle Direct Publishing is all backed by AI, including how it gets promoted on the channels, how people find your book, how the algorithms promote your book. It's you can't not publish and not leverage AI, right? So that's one aspect just for contextualization. But when it talks about the writing and in the context, I mean, even doing Google searches or spell checks or things like that. And again, this isn't making a claim that you should just toss something in the chat GPT, take that out and put it in your book. That'll be rubbish. It'll be a terrible book. You won't sell very many of them. But it is the contextualization of how useful the tool can be. But again, back to the book, it's these sort of conversations about what it is about humans, what it is about the way we work. And AI makes a great literary foil on which to analyze that.
Yeah, that's really neat. I'm super excited that, the second book is out and that you're continuing the series. So hopefully maybe in 6 more months, another year, we'll have you back to figure out what the humans are doing.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I got to let the dust settle on. I just switched full-time day jobs, so I kind of let the dust settle on that. I'm hoping to be able to have book 3 out within the next year. I just got to sit down and crank it out. But right now I'm kind of in the let the dust settle from book 2, get my brain in order for book 3, and then I can just sit down and write.
It sounds like a lot of fun. Tell people where we can find you.
Yeah, so the website for the books that you can go to very easily is thesingularitychronicles.com. You'll find all the links. There's great promo videos that I have up there, and then all the places you can go to get it. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, basically everywhere you can find ebooks or otherwise. You can find it there. There's a Facebook group called Fans of the Singularity Chronicles, so you can go there and you can interact with me. I run the group. So if you want to ask questions about the book, I mean, all questions, observations, this is where I want people to come in, kind of wrangle with these ideas. I also write a lot of nonfiction. So the nonfiction actually feeds my fiction. And the nonfiction can be found on polymathicbeing.com. It's a Substack. It's where I explore counterintuitive essays across domains and disciplines, leadership, psychology, technology. Basically, there's nothing that I don't try to touch, but trying to find those weird, interesting fusions in the middle. So you won't find the binary in my writing. You'll find a lot of interesting insights though. So the singularitychronicles.com, on Facebook at the Fans of the Singularity Chronicles, and then also Substack is polymathicbeing.com, and that's where you'll find a lot of my nonfiction that feeds the fiction writing.
Well, very fun. Yes, I have a lot of sci-fi lover and engineers in my family, so we're all sharing the books. So we'll be excited.
That's awesome. Perfect.
Well, thank you for being here, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great to be on again.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.